Hey guys, welcome back to AFOL TV. Today we're doing our part 3 of our Lego street build for the new city, which is technically part 2 of the Lego train curve, which I know has interested a lot of people. So today we're going to show you the progress that we made over the last week compared to our last video. If you recall, in our last video we went over how we were laying out the curve and how we intended to incorporate it into our streets. We've since made a lot of progress, but before I show you, let me go over real quick again what we're using to do this. If you're not familiar, we use Trix bricks out of the EU, and overall we do recommend the product for your cities. The only flaw that we found was that the bricks are somewhat 3D printed and don't seem to adhere to Lego bricks as well as normal Lego connections would. So there is a little bit wobbliness, for lack of a better term, in connecting some of the bricks. But overall, we can't argue that it's probably the best option out on the market right now for a custom solution for Lego curves, especially if you want to make everything flat and tiled for your city streets. So what have we been working on? Well, over the last week, we have really come a far way in getting this intersection put together. First, we kind of started with figuring out how the light bluish gray would integrate into the dark bluish gray transition for the Lego roads. And for us, we thought it made the most sense to do the triangular angled modified tiles to achieve this. It creates a really nice transition into the Lego curve of the train area. And it also adds some flexibility on each side of the curve to allow for the curve itself to cut through the light bluish gray before transitioning to the darker bluish gray. Now, it's not a perfect solution. On the edges, you know, we can't really continue the line for where cars are to stop, so we're trying to think of how to do that, maybe white electrical tape. But overall, we're pretty happy with how it turned out. Once we were kind of finished tiling everything, we then started building the sides of the roads to incorporate this into the mill system to make sure that we expanded the width of the roads. This is perfect for 6 wide plus vehicles, and we highly encourage it for any cities where you have larger than 4 wide vehicles. We did notice we forgot the continuation of the white line, so we fixed that going forward just to make sure the continuity is there for the road. Now, all said and done, this is kind of how it turned out. We finished both sides, and as you can see, we think it looks really, really good, especially from the top down. Obviously, the curve of the track doesn't align perfectly with the angle of the light bluish gray and the dark bluish gray, but we think that it carries over the theme pretty well, and it just adheres to the curve of the train track perfectly, as well as the wall on the side, which, if you recall from our last video, we did using 1 and 1x2 tiles to kind of create that curve. Next step was adding palm trees and plants, as well as flowers down below to match our other medians. We even put a sign up. We're going to replace that in the future, but we just wanted to make sure that everything looked good and that the track was seamless. As you recall from our last videos, it's also really important to make sure that you test the track when you lay it down by running the train over it several times, just to make sure there aren't any little bits and pieces sticking up that might catch the train when you finally start to run it at full speed. Now, let's talk about the next big area, and that is rebuilding the bridge. So for that, I'm going to turn to the Handycam. So stepping back, you can see we still have a lot of work to do, but this whole area over here is probably going to be kind of like a wide sidewalk area with maybe some street vendors. And we're going to put some little fishermen right here who will basically fish in between the bridge and this area. And it's going to go down to the water, which you can't really see without a light down there, but essentially it'll go under the bridge. We're rebuilding the bridge, which you saw in our last city. And there's going to be some changes to it, but we started adding the smaller details. Got to fix all the wildlife and trees and whatnot, but you can see that the overall shape is starting to come together. So essentially, this side will continue straight. That side will continue straight as well, but it'll also connect to the new road that way. But it'll basically be like a modified T intersection. If I shift to the top-down view, you can kind of see how the train runs through the intersection and everything kind of comes together. So it'll cut right through the middle of the intersection over to the new streets on the side, which we didn't have in our old city. So we're going to have a whole new kind of, call it waterfront area, and separate area over here, which will probably be low rise. And it'll basically continue into the double street on this side as well, total of 4 lanes. Now, to do this, we have to carry over the theme from not only the median and the tiled train area, but we basically have to carry that double median that we had elsewhere in the city over here as well. So if you look, we're kind of already building out the shape for it. And if I lay down a green plate, you can kind of get a flavor for what we have planned over here. But basically it's going to continue the design and just kind of tie everything together that you've seen elsewhere in the city, which is great. We're also working on the crosswalks. So there won't be one over here, but it's basically going to be crosswalks right here. And then there'll be another one down here, which will take you over to the wider sidewalk area and the fishing area, for lack of a better term. Now, the other intersections in the city are still coming along as well. We started laying those out and we're still working on kind of figuring out the exact plan for that and the crosswalks and whatnot. But we do have parts coming in from Bricklink to hopefully finalize these soon. And once all the streets are finalized, then we can finally start putting our skyscrapers back into place. Right now, this is not the final resting place of all the different skyscrapers. And the plan is to still keep kind of a downtown core in the back with most of them lumped together. But we also want to create a little bit better spread throughout the city and then a low-rise area down towards those two streets that we talked about earlier. Other things that we need to do is finalize the bridge, which is coming along as we mentioned, but still a work in progress, as well as some of the other streets that still have gaps remaining or other projects throughout the city to tie everything together, as well as the streets in the back. Outside of that, we just need to add minifigs, cars, and some life basically back to the streets, but we're really excited with how everything's coming along and hope you guys are too. Well, guys, that's it for today's video. I hope that, showing you guys how we built this gave you some inspiration for your own city, as well as a few takeaways. If you haven't checked out part 1 of this series, be sure to do so. I'll link it up above. But that's it for today. Thanks again for watching, and we'll be sure to see you next time.